What's going on, everybody? Happy Friday. Welcome to the Paul Harrell program. We got a great show for you. I got a lot to talk about. We've got two guests that are going to come on the program. We're going to check in with Anita Tibau. We're going to talk about mercury in dentistry and how, we have a golden opportunity here in the United States to actually do something about this toxicity that's poisoning all of us. So it's a really good Maha segment. So we're going to talk to her about that. Also, we check back in with Dr. Andrew Paquette and his Twitter account exploding, by the way. I was very interested to see this because he is actually getting some really good traction about all the voter fraud he's uncovered, specifically some old data that he's been posting out of the state of New York showing that 1.5 million cloned voter registrations exist in that state. You know, you assume that a blue state like New York is, they don't need to cheat. That's a phony assumption, I think, but we think, well, they're already blue, they're already leftists, they're already liberals, so, there's no point in cheating up there. No, you would be wrong. You would be wrong, so we're going to talk about that. Very interesting stuff that's happening online. But first, Animal Farm. Yes, we're going to talk about Animal Farm and the new movie by Angel Studios. Angel Studios facing backlash for making a movie that is not based on the source material. Kind of an epidemic right now in Hollywood, whether you're looking at, Lord of the Rings or really any number of intellectual properties. They just can't seem to keep their political opinions out of it. They are totally abandoning their art in many cases. They can't help it, and it's because it's the religion to them, and they can't not put their religious dogma out there to try to indoctrinate everybody. So they take, George Orwell's Animal Farm, which is about the dangers of Marxism, and Angel Studios allows Andy Serkis, admittedly, to make it about capitalism instead of Marxist communism. And they're facing backlash from it, and conservative influencers are taking cash to promote the film. Anyway, that's another angle to this that I find very fascinating. It's one of these things that happened. You want to take advertiser dollars. I'm sure many of these conservatives, quite frankly, they think, well, hey, this is Angel Studios. They're putting out movies like The Sound of Freedom and other things, and so we can say that it's a safe thing to back. But Tim Pool didn't. Tim Pool called this out weeks ago. We reported it. He said, I'm not taking their ad dollars because I saw the movie, and it is not. It's not actually Animal Farm. And so you've got all these kids that are going to go see this movie that opens today, and they're going to get a version of a story was not the point of the life that Orwell lived, quite frankly. So we're going to talk about that, and what else we got? Oh, yeah. Looks like Alabama and South Carolina and Louisiana and Tennessee, and maybe we can cross our fingers for Georgia if we can get Rhino Brian Kemp to actually do what the people want. Actually, look out for your voters. Looks like they're going to call special sessions and they're going to redistrict. We're going to talk about that as well. Don't go anywhere. The Paul Harrell program starts right now.
The Paul Harrell program.
All right, folks. So, as always, broadcasting from the state of Arkansas here on LFA TV, also the Paul Harrell program YouTube channel, Facebook, X. Do all the things, like, share, subscribe. We really do appreciate it. Where was it going to go? You have to forgive me. I am this has been a long week, and I am just admittedly a little scatterbrained this afternoon. You guys have me for the next 2 hours until we hand it off. Angel Studios inverted. I found this from Truth-Based Media. Truth-Based Media. This headline: Angel Studios inverted Animal Farm, and top conservatives took cash to help promote the abomination. Here it is right here. So there you see it. Animal Farm, abomination, and the conservatives promoting it. This is written by Alethea Dukas. She says, today Angel Studios released an animated adaptation of George Orwell's Animal Farm in theaters across the country. Conservative parents have a better option that costs nothing more than a library card and an afternoon of their time. Read the book Read the book to your children instead. The novel runs roughly 30,000 words and takes the average reader about 2 hours to finish. With a child asking questions along the way, you have a 3-hour education in the nature of power, the seductions of utopian rhetoric, and the bitter arithmetic of revolution. The film offers something else entirely. The film offers a lie wearing Orwell's name. Now, I've spent 3 or 4 segments on this story over the last couple of weeks, and it's one of these things that it is like one of my biggest pet peeves. It's something that really fires me up because there was a time when you could just take the source material and make it into a movie. You could see this. One of the reasons Marvel Comics had such a successful run for 10 years and then it just went off the rails is because they started maybe they did do some race swapping, but I know they did some gender swapping. They started doing gender swapping. They started putting all of this woke messaging into the comics that wasn't originally there, and the people hated it, which is why Marvel Comics, by the way, is now, putting out this later this year, this new Avengers film that is basically, according to many reports, is going to just ignore all of this other woke garbage and honestly ignore a lot of these plot cliffhangers and loose ends, a lot of these threads they haven't tied off yet. They're just going to ignore it because the last, 5 years have just been, totally ridiculous. And full of this woke nonsense. They made Captain America black. Now there's the race swapping. Yeah, Captain African America. They made him black. Anyway, it's just been a total disaster. The audiences haven't liked it. Likewise with Lord of the Rings, which if you go back and you look in the beginning of the 21st century, Lord of the Rings, the zenith, I believe, of filmmaking, where they didn't stay entirely to the books, but they didn't change the core message. And in the documentaries, you have these directors saying, hey, 100%, man, like you have these directors just over and over again saying, what was the author's message? What was J.R.R. Tolkien's vision, message? What was his world? We're going to try to bring that to life on the screen. It was very important to them. They really wanted to do it. You look at Lord of the Rings today and Amazon and Jeff Bezos and what he did with Lord of the Rings and Rings of Power. Well, they made black dwarves. They said that we needed to see black dwarves, a dwarf of color. It's very important that we have dwarves of color in Lord of the Rings. You had a black elf. You had a black elf that looked like Don Lemon. Don Lemon before he's about to disrupt a worship service at a church. Then you had a girl boss. I mean, they literally took Galadriel, who is supposed to be like the most beautiful woman in the world, and embody the embodiment of femininity in that Tolkien universe, and they made her a dual sword wielding girl boss who was just absolutely unwatchable. It was so cringe. And they just completely bastardized any of the source material, and they gave orcs families. So the focus of evil in the Lord of the Rings are the orcs, which we could just unequivocally say, hey, these are evil. They don't need to exist. They don't need to exist in our land. They really don't need to exist, period. And we're going to go to war with these people. Well, they gave them families. That's right. They literally gave orcs. They made them a marginalized community, and they gave them a wife and children. Like, we got the answer to how orcs are created. Well, they're created just like we are. They're not, they're not spawns of Satan. They're not evil. No. They're just misunderstood, and they have a right to have land too. That's what Jeff Bezos and Amazon did to Lord of the Rings. It's totally unwatchable, and the fans hate it. Matter of fact, most people, if they do like it, they just love to hate watch it. And so now, and there's a lot more in between, but along comes Animal Farm. Along comes George Orwell's Animal Farm. And I said earlier, it just makes me so mad that these people cannot just do your jobs. This is not a hard concept. This is a proven art. You take something that's popular, that's already been written down. You basically have all of your lines already written by somebody a lot smarter than you. And Andy Serkis, who, by the way, played Gollum in Lord of the Rings, the original, the zenith of filmmaking, he comes along and is like, well, I'm a Democrat socialist, and you know what? That might have been fine for Orwell's day, warning about the dangers of communism and Marxism, but you know what? We're going to have to warn again. We're going to have to change it, and we're going to have to make this about capitalism. And Angel Studios says okay, or they, started something down the train tracks that they just couldn't stop and pull back. I know this isn't the first time Angel Studios has trusted mainstream artists like Andy Serkis, but you shouldn't trust these people. You shouldn't. And I don't blame audiences at all for seeing this as a total betrayal of the trust, that Angel Studios has earned with some people. But they couldn't do it. It's because it's a religion at this point. Everybody knew that most, if not all, of the people that worked on, keep going back to Lord of the Rings, but let's talk, everybody knew that most of the people that worked on Lord of the Rings were big liberals, progressives, or even socialists. But you know what? They were able to be like, well, we're coming together to tell this like timeless story that's so popular with so many people from different backgrounds, from different political backgrounds, and we're just going to tell it the way it's written. They can't do that anymore. They are incapable. They are enslaved to their own politics. So back to this story about how bad is it that this is just a film offers a lie that wears George Orwell's name. It says the deception begins with the premise. Orwell's 1945 novel was a surgical attack on Soviet collectivism written by a man who had previously watched Stalinist factions in Spain hunt and disappear his fellow soldiers. The book ends in calculated horror, the pigs walking on two legs, indistinguishable from the humans they replaced, the animals beneath them, no freer than they were under Mr. Jones. There is no rescue, there is no triumphant reformer. Director Andy Serkis, in his own words, at the International Animation Film Festival, the Annecy, decided audiences needed something different. Quote, we wanted some hope, he explained. So the new film grants the animals a successful second uprising against Napoleon, a brighter future, and a freshly minted villain, a billionaire businesswoman named Frida Pilkington, voiced by Glenn Close, who reportedly drives something resembling a Tesla Cybertruck. This is why Tim Pool calls this character Elon Musk's mom. They're trying to use this as an attack against Elon Musk. You remember they couldn't stand when Elon Musk gave President Trump $100 million or more than that and had access to the White House for only 5 months, to my chagrin. They can't stand that. That's where the whole no kings thing came from. They tried to, license the term oligarchy, which is something I'd been using on this show in terms of the Intel oligarchy for forever. And then all of a sudden they're like, no oligarchy, and yet it's like not a question of what kind of oligarchy you have. It's not a question of whether you have one or not. It's what kind you have. That's just the way the world works. She goes on, Orwell did not write a story about capitalist greed corrupting an honest revolution. He wrote a story about the revolution itself being the corruption. The pigs were always going to become the farmers. That was the thesis, replacing it with a tale about how collectivism would have worked just fine if not for an outside capitalist meddler. Is not adaptation, it is inversion. They're selling you the opposite of what Orwell wrote. The substance of the book matters here because the entire scandal of the film depends on understanding what is being replaced. Animals on Manor Farm overthrow the drunken, neglectful Mr. Jones. The pigs, the cleverest of the lot, assume leadership. 7 commandments of animalism are painted on the barn. Equality is declared, and then the slow, grinding work of betrayal begins. Each commandment is rewritten, each promise is hollowed out. Boxer, the loyal workhorse, is sold to the knacker once his usefulness expires. The pigs move into the farmhouse, sleep in beds, drink whiskey, and eventually walk upright. The book closes with the animals staring through a window at pigs and humans playing cards together, unable to tell which is which. That ending is not a creative misstep Serkis was correcting. It is the entire moral argument. Orwell's claim was that the seizure of power, regardless of who does the seizing, contains the seeds of its own corruption. There is no purified vanguard. There is no incorruptible leader who will deliver the equality the slogans promise. The structure itself is the trap. To remove that ending is to remove Orwell. In a Washington Examiner op-ed defending his film, Serkis wrote that his characters enthusiastically embrace capitalism and rebel only against corruption. Read that sentence again. Orwell's animals were not rebelling against capitalism. They were rebelling against a man. The pigs that took power afterwards were not capitalists. They were communists who became indistinguishable from the men they replaced. Stalin's Soviet Union shaking hands with the very Western powers it had once denounced. Serkis has not added a new theme to Orwell. He has surgically removed Orwell's actual theme and stitched in its opposite. One viewer summarized the film's apparent message on X with brutal economy. Quote, "It's 2025 and Animal Farm is a movie about communism working and being ruined by capitalism." The reaction was not paranoid, it was descriptive. When the new villain is a businesswoman in a Cybertruck, when Napoleon, voiced by Seth Rogen, is played for slapstick and flatulence jokes, when the slaughterhouse van that hauls Boxer to his death is rendered as a visual pun where the S is hidden so the sign reads Laughter House instead of Slaughterhouse. These are not choices of artists honoring a difficult text. These are the choices of an industry that cannot conceive of a villain who is not a corporation or of a corporation that does not have a capitalist address. Parents have an option that the film cannot match at any budget. Buy a copy of the book and or download it for free. Read it to your kids. It says children old enough to handle Animal Farm are old enough to handle a sad ending. In fact, they need them. The reason Serkis felt the need to insert hope is the same reason a generation of parents has been told to shield children from any narrative without redemption. But Orwell's bleakness was a kindness. He was telling a shadow of what could be. It's a shadow. Orwell, think about that. That's interesting. Orwell's bleakness was actually kindness. Just makes me think about, because it's a story, right? It's just a story. It's just a warning. It's actually kindness. It may leave you feeling sad, but it's kindness to try to prevent you from experiencing the real thing. It's kind of like when a Christian tells somebody else about sin. Hey, man, I don't know if you're living quite right, or hey, did you know that the Lord is displeased with the way you're living? And people say, well, that's unloving. And it's like, actually, no, it's just a shadow of judgment. It's not telling them, it's not telling the lost person that needs help. It's not hurting them in any way, really. It's a shadow of a judgment to come. And it's harmless compared to the judgment of God that happens at the end that will actually hurt you. That's just interesting to me. It just kind of struck me. But Orwell's bleakness was a kindness. He was telling readers, including young ones, that the world contains real evils that cannot be solved by the right slogan or the right leader. The lesson matters more, not less, in an age of utopian political rhetoric. The book gives you a vocabulary for recognizing manipulation that no animated feature with a cheerful third act ever could. And now we get to the influencer problem. So this is a third angle of this that I find fascinating. And we're just a small little podcast here, just trying to making our way downtown. So there's not any giant influencer. There's not any giant influencer contracts or deals for me to even have to say no to at this point. So just keep that in mind. Some parts of me sympathize with this position, especially if there were existing deals with Angel Studios to promote their content for multiple months or multiple movies. They probably thought this was going to be in line with George Orwell's actual work and not bastardized. Then, she writes, then there is the matter of the conservative commentators who took Angel Studios' money to promote the film. The disclosures are not the issue. Posts tagged Animal Farm Partner are doing what the Federal Trade Commission requires. Disclosure is the floor of ethics and paid promotion, not the ceiling. The real question is what an endorsement is supposed to mean coming from someone who built an audience on conservative principles and Christian conviction. Now, the first one that came out was Riley Gaines. This happened on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. It wasn't yesterday. It was probably Tuesday, Wednesday is when I saw it. And, of course, Tim Pool. I mentioned Tim Pool earlier because he was offered Animal Farm ad bucks. And he said, no, I saw the film and I can't advertise this. And then he even called it out. Now, the fact that Tim Pool did what he did and called out Animal Farm and Angel Studios and saying, I'm not doing this because you guys have inverted the film, was probably much to the chagrin of influencers out there who were planning on taking the cash and pushing this and having a very non-confrontational weekend. But now they kind of have one. So Riley Gaines, who I think has done incredible work and done great things exposing the trans issue and galvanizing the country against the madness. She took some money, apparently, from Angel Studios and said that they thought that the adaptation of George Orwell's novel was good. She says, incredibly well done. They do a perfect job of reminding viewers that Marxism always has and always will fail. The problem is what we're hearing, what's being reported is that the film isn't about Marxism at all, like at all. And I'll prove that to you here, or we could use some context clues to figure that here in a minute. She goes on, sponsorship is a legitimate business arrangement. Plenty of honest commentators, this writer included, run sponsorships and promote products they actually believe in. The line is simple. A sponsorship is an endorsement. An endorsement is a statement of belief. When a commentator who has spent years warning audiences about cultural manipulation by Hollywood accepts payments to recommend a film that inverts an anti-collectivist classic into an anti-capitalist messaging for children, the disclosure tag, she writes, does not redeem the act. It documents it. The audience is not paying attention to a commentator because they want to know what that commentator has been paid to say. So this, the first one, and I saw this myself, was Joe Redden, otherwise known as the older millennial. Now, he posts, and I can't play it. We are on digital cable in some markets, and so I haven't edited. And so, if you've ever followed the older millennial, sometimes the older millennial has, good takes. I know Rob Spencer, my co-host, is the one that first told me about the older millennial. So just like with anybody, sometimes, he says things and I think, that's interesting. Other times, that's good. Other times I disagree, whatever. But he also has a potty mouth, as I'll say. I'll just say he has, he uses a lot of four-letter words that we can't say on cable. So I'll just summarize it. But basically he endorses the movie. And he specifically says that this movie, just like Riley Gaines said in her post, in his video, he specifically mentions Marxism and that this movie calls out the dangers of Marxism. Not surprising, but Angel Studios has put out another banger of a movie. Paid partnership, so he's disclosing, hey, look, I took money to do this, but he's taking criticism for this. They are paying attention because they assume a baseline of trustworthy judgment behind the words, that trust is not a renewable resource. Then we have Emily Saves America. Quote, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Animal Farm in theaters May 1st. And then she mentions Tim Pool. To his credit, publicly refused Angel Studios advertising buy. His public statement was direct. The film is shockingly offensive, pro-communist, anti-capitalist with pro-leftist terrorism elements. Whether one agrees with every word, the principle is correct. There are checks one writes that should not be cashed, regardless of the dollar amount printed in the corner. I would say not calling this out is how you take something that could be good, like an Angel Studios, and not calling them out when they make their first misstep, or maybe this is their second or third. I don't know. They shouldn't be allowed to do this and get away with it. I mean, they shouldn't be allowed to do this. This is them whiffing at a softball. This is a softball pitch. You should be able to hit something like this out of the park. It's Animal Farm. It's George Orwell. It's a classic. And you whiff. And I think, it was intentional. I think it was, hey, we're going to call it. This is where you just okay, can you trust this company at all? How do you whiff such an easy pitch? It makes people think it's intentional and that you were intentionally wanting to indoctrinate kids into communism instead of out of communism. Certainly, if you're going to partner with left-wing actors and directors, they don't exist. There's not a world where they exist in where they're going to criticize communism today because they think it's the solution to all our problems. You name any problem that we have in this country, communism is always the answer for these people. So anyway, read the book. And back on the older millennial, this is what I was going to say. So this is the older millennials post that you saw there in that article. He says, not surprising, Angel Studios has put together another banger of a movie. He's taking a lot of heat on this. No, bro, you are usually the one calling this out right. You still have time to delete this. Now everyone is going to start. The MAGA takes money to promote blah, blah, blah. It's a trap. Paid reviews are fake reviews. It says, this other guy, Damage Control. Joe, have you actually watched it or listened to the director? They Orwelled Orwell, bro. If I were you, I'd take this down. They made capitalism the antagonist instead of communism and totalitarianism. Here's the director. Listen for yourself. Andy Serkis said this much. So the older millennial put out a follow-up post defending himself and also re-endorsing the movie. And he said, watching the right lose their minds because someone dared to also criticize the BS crony capitalism we deal with today as well. So now, and again, I can't play this video for you either because it's riddled with cuss words. But he basically says, he changes his tune completely. And he says, instead of saying, like he did in his first video, that this was a critique of Marxism, he now says, no, this is a critique of crony capitalism, and that's a good thing. And you know what? Our current system, and he even talks about, it's really clever what he does, and I can appreciate it. You know, he talks about how the Federal Reserve has robbed us of our republic, robbed us of our actual capitalism. And I've talked about this program for a very long time, that we don't actually have capitalism in America right now. We haven't for a very, very long time, or an actual free market. It is all controlled by elites and oligarchs and everything else. And he says, so now he's defending himself, saying, yeah, but the movie's doing a good thing because it's calling out our current system, man, and our current economy. And our current economy is not capitalist, it's crony capitalist and everything else. And it's a very clever way to try to spin what you've done, because there is a half-truth in it, but it kind of misses the whole point of, but that's not what the book, and this is the hill that I will stand on. It's not what the book says. And you could call me a recovering artist when it comes to stuff like this, as somebody who, has a degree related to performance. I know what the art is, and I know what you do with source material, and you stick to the source material. It is part of the collaborative effort of acting and in entertainment and everything. And this idea that you're going to take this work that is obviously popular, and that's the problem. That's the elephant in the room, is that they're calling something Animal Farm when it's not Animal Farm. It's not what was written. And so the whole project is just covered in this cloud of deception. The whole thing is suspect. The entire thing. Some of the comments, given that the director Serkis is a democratic socialist, it makes sense that he admits that this goes after capitalism and not Stalinist Russia. Mike Flynn, this is not the General Mike Flynn, says, you literally said in your first video that this is about the dangers of Marxism. Now all of a sudden you're admitting it's not. It would have been better had you just ignored the comments and taken your money. Also, Orwell was not a capitalist. He described himself as a democratic socialist. He liked Lenin and hated Stalin. This is just a terrible look all around for you, dude. I don't know, man. That's just a comment, but this thing really just bothers me. I'm just sick of it. And, you hate it that it's affecting conservatives in this way, because the whole point of so much of our, our culture jamming and us trying to find a way around the left's woke sex religion that just seems to infiltrate everything. This is kind of a key pillar of that, is essentially, propagandists are going to do propaganda when you let them. And you know, a lot of people had faith in Angel Studios to be different. And a lot of people are still waiting on, you know, we do have to wait as the anti-woke pendulum swings back, or or whatever, the pendulum, it's back to the left. Now it's come back to the right because we rejected so much of the trans sanity. But now you've got to wait out. Like, if you are somebody that still has any sort of curiosity about what the culture, what movies may be coming out or anything, you're going to have to wait another 5 years, because they thought this woke stuff was going to stick around for the next 10 years. And so everything that was in the hopper when they thought Kamala was going to get elected and was going to issue in some sort of, Christians in boxcars utopia for them, all that's got to be scrapped. And that's assuming that they even have a profit motivation left at all, because in some of these cases, they're so committed to the propaganda and the intel oligarchy are involved in what they're creating, they don't even have to make money in some of these cases, because they just exist to demoralize the country, demoralize us emotionally, but then, to Jeff Younger's point, who's been on this program, to literally remove morals from society, to demoralize us to where anything goes. And that's a perfect segue, or a perfect kind of bow on all of this, is that, maybe just don't take the money on this one. I get it. I also sympathize. It's not just older millennial. You got Tucker Carlson, who took some money here too. It looks like he just posted this one tweet, said, made it clear, paid partnerships, and said that you can see Angel Studios May 1st. Tickets are available. And then, put out the he put out a bunch of different ads, I guess. I guess this other one's American Financing, Stop by. So he was listing sponsors. But my point is like, Angel Studios they got deals with all these people. But Tim Pool, to his credit, was like, hey, I'm not advertising this because it's not George Orwell. It is George Orwell under another name. So kudos to him for that one. Anyway, let me know what you think. Sound off in the comments. We're going to take a break. Going to reset here. Don't go anywhere. This is the Paul Harrell Program. We really appreciate you watching. Happy Friday to everybody out there listening and watching. And we're going to be back here in just a minute with Anita Tibau.
The other things that we're seeing, more and more use for is even vascular issues. So one of the mechanisms that red light, near-infrared light, or Red-VIVE works is stimulation of the mitochondria and stimulation of nitric oxide production. So when nitric oxide is released in cells, it vasodilates cells. It reduces inflammation. It moves blood. It brings blood flow to areas. So folks that have issues with ulcers or burns or wounds, it can help stimulate increased blood supply, and you need blood to heal. So that can open up different avenues for peripheral artery disease, for neuropathic pain syndromes. And so that's one of the other areas for nerve injury or nerve pain that we can leverage this type of medicine.
For centuries, light has been used to heal. Awaken the body with Red-VIVE.
This is our family dog, Bubba. He is a Shorty Jack Russell, and he brings a lot of love and laughter into our home. We just want to thank Pet Club for making healthy food and treats for our animals. Bubba has been on Pet Club food for a little over a year now. He really likes the Sequoia dry food, and then I put a scoop of the Sequoia wet dog food in there with some hot water and stir it up, and he absolutely loves it. And he likes the mush puppies, but his ultimate favorite is the antlers. Those keep him busy for a really long time, and he really likes them. It makes us feel really good that the food and treats that we give him have healthy ingredients in them, because we want him to be around for a really long time. Our previous dog was a lab, and his name was Titus, and we fed him in bulk, and we would just get his food from the big box grocery stores. And unfortunately, that food wasn't very healthy for him, and he ended up getting cancer and passing away. So we didn't want to make that mistake with Bubba, so we were really fortunate to find Pet Club and find some really healthy food for him to eat. So we would just like to thank Pet Club, and we just really appreciate the healthy food that they make so we can keep this guy around as long as we can.
The Paul Harrell Program.
The Childhood Amalgam Trial, which was a prospective randomized study, which is the top level study you can do in science. It means taking a whole group of children, dividing them randomly. Some of them you get amalgams, some of them you get composites. Furthermore, they said we're going to test on series of parameters: urinary mercury, porphyrins, kidney damage, neurological damage. They decided all that before they ever tested a single child. This is what we're going to do. They collected all the data prospectively, and what it reveals is damage in every single domain study. Every single outcome that they were looking at, that they said, this might be of concern, so we want to study it to see if it's related to amalgam. All of them are being linked to amalgam exposure. What happens to these children in the course of the study? And what we found, looking at first urinary mercury, then urinary porphyrins, then eventually kidney dysfunction markers, is that mercury exposure from dental amalgams in a dose-dependent fashion, meaning the amount of mercury being released from the amalgams, significantly negatively impact each of those measurements. So it turns out that amalgams, based on the number, the size, how many you have, all of those things, is related to how much urinary mercury you have. It's related to how much porphyrins you have for the mercury-associated porphyrins. And perhaps worse, it's associated with kidney dysfunction. It actually seems to be causing ongoing kidney damage at the level of the proximal tubules. When one studies kidney dysfunction, chronic damage to the proximal tubules is associated with chronic kidney disease, which is the #1 kind of kidney disease in the United States. In considering the childhood amalgam trial findings that I've been discussing, they're telling a very compelling story. A story of damage to the kidney, of mercury building up in the body, of causing kidney damage, brain damage. This is a story that makes sense, very direct, very simple to understand. If I had somebody from the American Dental Association sitting next to me and trying to tell their story, what would they say now? Well, amalgams are safe. They always say that. Well, how do you explain that in light of these findings? Well, we have to suspend the laws of chemistry and physics and physiology to say, yeah, it's just happenstance, coincidence that we found damage to the kidney. It's really safe. Well, it contributed to mercury body burden. That's coincidence. They're actually safe. Well, we can find it in the urine. It's just happenstance, coincidence. It must be safe. There is no story. The story that we're telling is one that's based on over 100 years of science about mercury. We know that mercury is released from amalgams. We know mercury is toxic to almost every organ system in the body. This is what was plausible before the study. Now it's overwhelmingly plausible. They have no story to tell other than we think it's safe because we think it's safe.
For more information, patients and dental professionals can access resources about biological dentistry, as well as a directory of IAOMT biological dentists who are SMART certified at IAOMT.org.
All right, so welcome back to the show. That was a video that was posted over at a Substack, IAOMT, Biological Dentistry and Systematic Health Substack. Matter of fact, I'll show it to you here. And it's a follow-up on a story that we did, I guess, a month or so ago at this point, several weeks ago it feels like. The news moves pretty fast. The headline, Government Study Exposed Abused Children to Mercury. We covered this. The CASA-PIA study is what it was called. It happened years ago. The U.S. government-funded clinical trial placed mercury-containing dental fillings into vulnerable children, many of them institutionalized orphans, while serious allegations of sexual abuse were unfolding within the very system that housed them. We talked about this because it was very strange that these kids, I mean, obviously evil and wicked, but it was just super weird that these orphans are being sexually abused, the abuse comes to light, and the government researchers don't end their study on mercury. Instead, they continue it. As if, it's just incredible to me. It's crazy to me. And honestly, I'm not going to give these people the benefit of the doubt. It seems like the sexual abuse. I'm going to say this. Anita Tibau may not. But I'm to the point now where I think the sexual abuse wasn't the flaw. I think it was the feature. That's where I'm at, because I don't trust any of these Frankenstein scientists that are out there, trying to manufacture stuff, experimenting, doing studies. I don't buy it. I don't buy any of it. And so I thought it'd be a good idea to check in with Anita Tibau. Obviously, for those who've been watching the show for a while, you're familiar with her. She is an expert on the dangers of dental amalgams, of mercury in your mouth. She's spoken before the United Nations and UN panels on this topic. Obviously, she is very, very well versed in this. Anita, welcome back to the show. We really appreciate it.
Well, Paul, thank you for having me again, because the story of the Casa Pia Children's Amalgam Trial, it needs to be told, because we're talking about more than half of the U.S. population that has mercury in their heads today, including little kids. It is a known neurotoxin. It's probably one of the most studied toxins and chemicals since the beginning of alchemy. And yet it has not been banned in the United States, while other countries like the European Union have already banned it. The problem with the Casa Pia study is that in 2002, when they found out that these kids were being molested, and the whistleblower happened to be one of the kids that was in the mercury study as well. And I call it the mercury study because that's essentially what it was. They put mercury in the heads of, let's say, 250 kids, and 250 of the other kids, of a total of 500 plus kids, did not receive mercury fillings. They called them other filling materials. And they knew at the beginning that mercury was a very toxic compound, and they knew that they were going to try to prove, using this study, calling it a prospective study, that mercury was safe for kids. That was the whole premise of the study. And that's what they sold the study on, until there was a Freedom of Information Act request after their first paper was published. And the Geyers, you saw David Geyer, and thank you for posting that, because the explanation and the visuals that came along with that audio are very explicit, and people can easily understand what the problems are with mercury and how it attacks all of the major organs. So the original study they published in 2006 saying mercury doesn't cause any of these problems. Well, the original researchers, they failed to include all of the information. In other words, they created a document, a study, that showed that mercury was safe, because that was the outcome that they were looking for. And in 2009, when the FDA was being sued, they changed their regulatory guidelines. They used the Casa Pia study as the benchmark to say, okay, mercury's safe for kids, so it must be safe across the board. But it was all based on fraud. And now it's provable all these years later. And the reason why I've been trying to expose this story for, it's now 25 years. It's unbelievable to me. But because of the people that are now in this administration, I think we have a chance. Now, mind you, these kids that were exposed in the first place between 8 and 12 years old, they're now in their 30s and maybe early 40s. And God only knows what the health is for these victims, because they are victims. And it's our responsibility to get this all unraveled, go back to these same individuals and have them medically checked, have their teeth restored properly, taking out the mercury and whatever else they may deem necessary to help them as much as possible to restore whatever health their situation is.
It's incredible. And also, I'd left that part out that you just covered, which was, not only were these kids sexually abused and there was a cover-up of it until all these years later, and the whistleblower, but the study was a fraudulent study. if you look into the data they found, it actually, they had to cut corners in order to get this study, because this is what they set out to do. They set out to go ahead and prove that mercury was totally safe from the beginning. They had, this is not science, Anita, and that's why they don't stop the study when there's something there's a giant red flag that, hey, some of our subjects are also being sexually abused, and by the way, it was reportedly a ring. It was an organized sex trafficking ring that was going on here, where you also, get sex trafficked and then funneled into some study for for government scientists to experiment on you. I mean, it's the stuff out of, it's the stuff out of movies. It's the horror stories out of movies that you see. It's absolutely disgusting. Real quick, I want you to remind me about Europe. Can you just do a quick comparison? What does Europe think of mercury in your mouth versus what does American dentistry think of mercury in your mouth?
Well, this will go into this paper that I sent you that was recently published. The European Union of 27 countries banned the use of dental mercury in 2025 across the board. So 27 countries in Europe no longer use it. But in the Nordic Council of Ministries, several countries much earlier than that, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, they had banned mercury, let's say, maybe 15 to 20 years ago. So they were always ahead of the curve on this. There's now many countries that have populations over 100 million that are developing countries, like the Philippines, for example, that have a huge population. They banned it, and other countries as well. So to say that the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, I call them the usual suspects, and the UK, are not taking any position on this and are staying quiet, should tell everybody a lot.
Oh, 100%. So do we have plans to get rid of mercury here? Haven't they said that they may do it in the next 15 years or something?
Oh, yeah, this was the conclusion of the last Conference of the Parties. They call it COP6, Conference of the Parties 6 of the Minamata Convention on Mercury Treaty, last November, where they said there was a consensus to now, across the board for the remaining countries that are still using it, to end it by the year 2034.
Okay.
And this is unconscionable. What has happened in the interim, though, is the Indian Health Services in the United States, which is federal, published an announcement several months ago, and I believe I've sent that to you. In 2027, this group of people will no longer be exposed to mercury from dental fillings. So this is a problem because it's a small portion of the population, and thank God, because usually Native peoples are the last to have anything, any justification for anything that would help their health and well-being. But now, in this circumstance, they're first, which is astounding to me.
Yeah, I see it right here.
Also,
in Indian Health Service to end use of mercury-containing dental amalgam by 2027. The Indian Health Service announced today it will end the use of mercury-containing dental amalgam in its facilities by 2027. Dental amalgams have been widely used in restorative dentistry due to its material properties, strength, durability, and affordability, particularly for multi-surface restorations of molars, premolars. However, growing environmental and health concerns regarding mercury exposure, along with global efforts to reduce the use of mercury-containing materials, have prompted the agency to assess safer alternatives. It's not safe yet. So we've got the Federal Health Program for American Indians and Alaskan Natives. They're going to do it next year, and yet the rest of us are it's still going to be a legal practice here in the States.
Which is why I'm fighting this like as much as one person can. I have the support of the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology and the International Academy of Biological Dentistry and Medicine. Now they're getting on board on the Casapia story because it really is a story that has facilitated the continued use of mercury in dentistry in the United States and beyond. Because unfortunately, most countries use the FDA as their benchmark of whether they're going to do something or not do something. And everybody comes back, well, what does the FDA say? Well, what does the FDA say? Well, as you know, too, Paul, you had me on your show when I filed my citizens petition, and that was in last, I guess it was July. And they responded. And now the FDA, when someone files a citizens petition, they have to respond within a period of time. I believe it's 180 days. Well, they, of course, answered like a week or so before their 180 days was up. And they basically said, we are still looking at it. So they respond, and then they say, we responded, we did what the law says we have to do, but we're going to still look at it. Now, this is outrageous, 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 because they have been looking at this, and I'm not the first citizens petition. There's been multiple citizens petitions filed over, 25 years plus. And I participated in other people's citizens or other organizations' citizens petitions. And I decided to file my own because I wanted to create a paper trail that I would have control over to prove that this is all, it's just a cover-up, and it's unbelievably horrible that they're still using mercury today, that this study on these kids who were victimized on multitude of different angles, and they've never been helped. So, my goal is to clear the board on this, help these now young adults, or actually they're not even young anymore, and expose everything, because so many people in the United States have mercury, as I mentioned earlier, in their teeth today, from children to, seniors. And that could be the reason why they have developed chronic health problems. And that's all a fact. I mean, nobody can debate the problems that mercury causes. They cannot, because there is science going back over 100 years of how dangerous it is.
I completely agree with you, and you're exactly right. On the screen now, we have this study, and again, you sent this to me, this paper, Dental Amalgam Exposure and the Risks and Progression of Multiple Sclerosis. It's International Journal of Epidemiology, and it says concerns about the neurotoxic potential of dental amalgam and multiple sclerosis, MS, persists, but its impacts on disease risk and progression remain unclear. The results of the study: amalgam exposure was associated with increased MS risk in a dose-dependent manner. A significant interaction with smoking was observed. In the longitudinal cohort, those with at least 6 fillings had increased risk of CDW and progression to EDSS3. Associations were stronger among current smokers, those diagnosed after age 40 years, and individuals on low-efficacy therapies. The EDSS trajectories also showed faster progression in the high-exposure group. Conclusion: dental amalgam exposure may be associated with both increased risk of multiple sclerosis and faster disability progression. Findings support a potential synergistic effect with smoking and raise the hypothesis that mercury may contribute to MS-related neurodegeneration. Again, this is a study that is confirming. By the way, I know they have to do these studies, and I get it, and I'm not a scientist, but we've known, like you have already said, that mercury, Anita, is toxic. The fact that you're putting it in your mouth permanently and it's seeping into your bloodstream or leaking or whatever, we know it's not rocket science, okay? I know they got to have these studies to get these regulatory agencies to act, but shocker, a toxic metal in your body is going to have terrible consequences for your health long term. And by the way, there's also a big pharma angle to this too, because you're going to run. Okay, now you've got all these symptoms. We're not going to take the mercury out of your head, but we're going to put you on the big pharma hamster wheel, and now you're taking these pills for the rest of your life to try to manage the symptoms. So, mercury in your mouth helps big pharma. It gives them lifelong slaves, customers, and that's really what I see going on here. So tell us about this particular study with multiple sclerosis.
Well, Dr. Hal Huggins, the late Dr. Hal Huggins, who, you know, was just absolutely brilliant. And he came out with a book, and I think I sent you an image of it on MS and the relationship between that and mercury. I think he published it in 2002. So this is something that was known. And every time Hal would talk about disease-related toxicity and the link of mercury causing these diseases or being the foundation that were diagnosed as these diseases, everybody always said, no. But Hal was onto so many things, and he was just so far advanced in his research that he figured it out. He was 50 years ahead of his time. And now, okay, so that book was published in 2002. So we're 25, 26 years later, and now the papers are coming out saying, yeah, this is right. It's just unbelievable. But MS is just one of many diseases. Alzheimer's disease is linked directly to mercury exposure. And when you think of the age...
I didn't read this beforehand. I'm sorry to interrupt, Anita. This is in the Amazon summary of the book. If you are frustrated and discouraged from hearing that there is nothing but pharmaceutical drugs you can take, or you are exhausted from trying strange and costly treatments, take heart. This book quotes scientific journals and is based not only on scientific studies in biochemistry, but also on the experiences that Dr. Huggins has had with MS patients over the last 33 years. So, again, you said this is the early 2000s that this book comes out, and here we are 20, 26 years, 25 years later, and we're still putting the stuff in our heads. It's still giving people multiple sclerosis. I mean, when is the madness going to stop? I want you to finish your thought, but my follow-up question is going to be, you said earlier in the interview, you do have confidence and optimism that this administration under Bobby Kennedy is going to really move the needle here. I want you to tell us why you think that is.
Well, he moved it on to the Indian Health Services. That was due to him. I saw an interview with him, previous to this actually coming out. Maybe it was in March of last year. And he was on the reservation, and he was talking about improving the health and so on and so forth. Bobby clearly knows about mercury. He has so much knowledge about mercury and vaccines, and he knows about dental mercury. But for some reason, the vaccines came first and not dentistry. And I don't know the logic behind it. It doesn't really matter, because I do know this. If we don't get this done now, shame on all of us. If we're going to wait till 2034 and follow the UN mandate, shame on us, because the United States could have been the first country on the planet to ban mercury in dentistry. And here we are tailing in the last place behind developing countries that have zero to no financial resources to be able to do this. And they're doing it. They've done it. So like you said, we get sick. And I've been saying this forever. The dentist makes you sick. You're on the medical treadmill till you're in the box. But it's actually provable. Mercury, to me, is the number one thing, because you're sitting out with that in your head 24/7 for decades upon decades. And now with populations aging and the link between neurological problems, it's there. Nobody's going to be able to deny it, because there's so much science. It's global science. It's not one paper here, one random paper there. There's thousands of papers on this topic now that link it back to mercury exposure. And there's a genetic predisposition to also having a greater susceptibility if you have mercury in your head. And when you talk about the number of fillings, your propensity for disease goes up, obviously, with the number of fillings that you have. And if you're that higher risk with the genetic predisposition, you're going to have health problems. That's like a given. And nobody's going to be able to deny that. So I'm praying, and I'm trying every which avenue that I can to shine the light on the Casapia story, because right now, that is, the child molestation and the Jeffrey Epstein and all of these other things all of these, scandals of abuse, they're in the news now. So I'm trying to piggyback on that to get this story out.
I think that's a great idea. Anything, anything that can get people's interest and spread the word and get people educated. A lot of times when you uncover scandals like this, what you're actually uncovering is little patterns or little factories that can, I guess in my conspiratorial mind, I'm thinking, okay, they get the funding to do this government study years ago, and the sex traffickers are involved, or maybe they're one and the same. And how many times has this been repeated to where these scientists, they get the funding for, this study or whatever, and the human traffickers, come alongside them and like, okay, we're running this op again, That's where my mind goes on this. I feel like, the scientific method, your results are supposed to be repeatable. I think they probably are taking that, way too far when it comes to the opportunity of this level of evil and corruption that presents itself with each study, especially when we're talking about the United States dollars going to, countries that are in the third world or, countries that are away from our jurisdiction. It just creates this opportunity for really disgusting, terrible crimes against humanity and children. So while I have you, Anita, I'd like for you to talk about this. We text back and forth, and you text me this, which is I'm very interested in this because I don't take Netflix's advice when they come out with movies that say "Don't look up." Okay, what are you trying to keep from me? So I do look up. I really started looking up during COVID when I spent a lot of time at my house, but I decided to just spend most of it outside, and I started looking up and I started noticing the things that were being sprayed and how, a clear day would become overcast after, planes were spraying stuff in the sky. It just wouldn't go away. So there's this tweet that is by the Geofight, and it says, first of its kind federal geoengineering lawsuit is filed by the Geofight. A whistleblower alleges destruction and manipulation of weather data records to justify geoengineering activity. A first of its kind federal lawsuit sets forth allegations by an atmospheric scientist that historical weather data was manipulated and destroyed in order to justify weather modification and geoengineering activities. The case is Maybe versus the United States, involves an amended complaint filed by a legal coalition known as the Geofight. The complaint challenges the reliability and integrity of long-standing weather data sets used over multiple decades, including during the Obama and Biden administrations, to model climate trends, support federal rulemaking, and justify large-scale environmental initiatives, including geoengineering and weather modification. It also adds claims against the University of Colorado Boulder, alleging retaliation and violations of federal whistleblower protections. I think one of the things, if I may for a second, talk about one of the positives that's come out of the EPA is under Lee Zeldin would be they have 2 pages now on the EPA.gov website. One of them is a geoengineering page, and the other one is a contrails/chemtrails page. Okay, now they don't come right out and say it, but and even RFK said on Dr. Phil that he thinks a lot of this stuff is being run through DARPA. He came out and said that. But they don't come right out and say it, Anita. But if you know how to read the documents and read between the lines, it's not perfect. I wish it was more forthcoming. But they talk about what a contrail is. They talk about what a chemtrail is. But, hey, there's really no evidence of chemtrails. But then if you go to the geoengineering page, it lists the different ways you could geoengineer. And one of them is aerosol injections from airplanes in the sky. And so if you go read both of those documents back to back, you're like, well, here's the EPA admitting that this is going on. Or at least it's one step away from them admitting, no, this is actually happening. Anyway, I'll get your report or your response on this lawsuit.
Well, it's a long time coming. As you mentioned, DARPA and HARP, and I can't remember the acronym, what it stands for. It's HAARP. It came out of Alaska. And that was kind of the beginning of what was known to the public. But apparently, this geoengineering and weather modification has been going on since, I believe it was the 1940s. So this is nothing new. It's like mercury's been used for 170 years, and therefore it's safe. Well, we've been geoengineering the world, with various systems of pollution to modify weather as a military function. And, they say whoever controls the weather controls the world. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm here in sunny Florida where we have not had rain in I don't know how long. And when you see certain states, they get blasted with, 100 tornadoes, and then the next day it's snowing, and then the next day you got hail the size of golf balls. I mean, when you're my age, and I'm not going to say how old, but I remember the days when, as a kid, you go outside, you look at the sky, and there's puffy white clouds. That doesn't exist. It's a rarity now. In the state of Florida, they banned weather modification, geoengineering, whatever you want to call it, chemtrails, and yet they're up there all the time. They fly at night, they fly during the day. I mean, when you look at the sun, it's not the sun where they used to say when you were a kid, don't look at the sun because of the rays. There's a film over it, and it's obvious to anybody who sees it. Younger people, they're not going to be able to identify this because a lot of these kids now, they've never seen a clear sky. So this lawsuit is opening the door to expose more of what lies and horrible things we've been exposed to. During COVID, you had mentioned that you were going outside a lot. Well, there was a time, and it was January, where there was a huge fog bank that came into Florida, just outrageous. And I had already been here, several years. There's never been fog where I am, never. And people actually took water samples of the condensation, and they had them run through various analytical tests for metals or whatever they would find in there. And they found a lot of heavy metals, like arsenic, barium, strontium, you name it, and aluminum. Now, here's the kick, and I'm going to bring it back to mercury because it's all linked. If you have mercury in your teeth, any other metal that you're exposed to kind of compounds the toxicity. In other words, it's not a 1 + 1 = 2. It's like a 1 + 1 = 1,000. So everybody during this time of this massive fog bank that came into Florida, those of us who were paying attention, I didn't even go outside. I'm like, no, this really is strange. And then I started to see people, talking about it, and not just random people. They were doctors and scientists, for God's sake. So, we are being bombarded and sprayed like bugs. And at least now, this one, and it's a wonderful thing, has gotten traction. It went viral on the first day that it was published. It went up on X, and by the end of the day, I think it had like 50,000 views that I was able to see, and then it went up to 80,000, and I don't know how many now, but this lawsuit is taking, it's getting a lot of notification and traction because there's a lot of people that have been following this. This is just one of many things. But again, if you have mercury in your head and you're going outside and you're being bombarded with aluminum and all these other heavy metals, and you expect to be healthy, then you're Superman or Superwoman. So it's bad, but at least now it's coming out.
Yeah, it is coming out. As a matter of fact, let me say a couple of things. The first thing I'll say is that HARP is the acronym, stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Okay, DARPA. You can go look that up. HARP. The second thing I'll say is the other day, to your point about how rare things are. So I'm 41. My wife's about my age as well. We were driving down the interstate in my hometown, And we came across a hill and we looked, and then here's this beautiful skyline, and there are these white, puffy clouds. And we looked at my daughter and we said, look, this is what the sky used to look like when we were kids. It looked like this all the time. People remember. If you're old enough, you remember laying on the grass and looking up and figuring out the different shapes. Hey, that looks like a dinosaur. Hey, that looks like that. It still happens, but like you said, it is extremely rare that it happens because the clouds are just different. And I see it every morning when you go to work. Almost every morning, you can see them grid the sky. And where I am, so this is a case of, hey, are you going to believe your own eyes, or are you going to have to hear it on Fox News before you actually believe it? But where I'm at, there's kind of highways. So like, you should see planes going north to St. Louis, or, really you should see planes coming, from the southeast going towards St. Louis, or you should see, planes, going from Little Rock to, there's certain kind of highways. But you know what you don't have in rural Arkansas? You don't have crop dusting, at 30,000 feet. So you're not supposed to have that, but you do. You do have that. You have these right angles. People are not hallucinating this. Okay, this is not normal. All right, and and then to your point about the fog that rolled in. This is something that immediately gets called a conspiracy theory, and they're like, no, come on, what are you talking about? Have you ever considered that maybe this technology's got a lot more sophisticated? I want you to look at this story, Anita, because I always have this in the back of my mind, because when I was in talk radio back in 2012, this article from Fox News is October of 2012, headline, Army's secret chemical testing in St. Louis neighborhoods during Cold War raises new concerns. These are court documents. This is a well-known fact that in the 60s, or it may have been the 50s, no, in the 50s, in the mid-1950s, they played it off as, we're just doing Cold War drills in case we need to confuse the satellites of the Soviets. We're going to gas the slums of St. Louis. The United States Army gassed the slums of St. Louis in an experiment, and they gave hundreds of people cancer. Entire buildings, entire families over time came down with aggressive cancers and died. And there's very few survivors left because of it. This was in the 50s. Go ahead.
I said, can we say Tuskegee Airmen?
Yes, can we say, Tuskegee Airmen. But I just want everyone to marinate on this. This was our own government doing this to its own people. So the idea that a fog, rolls in 2020 or 2021 or wherever, because that, it happens, seems like almost every year there's some sort of weird thing that happens, or people test the snow that falls. And the idea that this is just insane, the government would never do this to us, you're lying to yourselves. Right. They look at us very much like, well, hey, like we've got the whole country that could participate in our clinical trial. They're not going to give their consent, but who cares about their consent? Or it's just a deliberate way to poison people, make them sick, a culling of the herd, which is what many people think the vaccine was all about, or an IQ test, one or the other. So to your point, we need to demand answers. People are using their own eyes, and you don't have to hear about it on CNN for it to be true. But if you know where to look, you can actually find mainstream sources that are telling you the truth years later, telling you the truth about what the government is doing to its own people.
Yep, it's so true. But also it's so sad because a lot of people, it seems like such an insurmountable mountain and thing that we have to fight in order to achieve the right way, the benefit for humanity. And, people often ask me, how many years? I've been doing this for decades. And until it's done, it's not done. And that's my motivation to get up in the morning. People came before me and they fought this till the very end. And the reason why I'm fighting now is because I think really with Bobby Kennedy at the helm of HHS, that is our only hope. If it doesn't happen now, then, I don't know what to tell you, but legally speaking, because of this Indian Health Service move to ban it in 2027, you just cannot have a small segment of the population or any part of the population have preferential treatments versus the rest of the population. You can't. So, I don't know how that legally plays, but, Bobby's a smart guy. He's a brilliant attorney. He certainly knows about mercury. And I'm hoping to get, this resolved sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, right now he's set it up. He's certainly set it up for some sort of equal protection lawsuit. I mean, I'm not an attorney either, but you could say right now somebody could, file a lawsuit and say, hey, Native Americans get protected from mercury, but we don't. That's unfair. I'm suing you. So
right.
That may be what ends up happening here. So, Anita, I'm going to give you the last word. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This was great. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you again, Paul, for having me. I have to do a shout out to Noel Fritz for his article that really opened up the story again on the Casafia from National Files. We have to keep fighting. We have to keep sharing. We have to keep exposing. Oh, that is the one thing that I want to say. So the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology tried to post this Substack on Facebook, and it was declined. Just press was presented to go out as a press release, the same story about the Casapia, and it was declined. So call it what you will, but in my mind, it's suppression of a very important story. And they're saying, well, it doesn't meet our guidelines. Well, what are your guidelines? Whatever happened to freedom of speech? So this is very concerning to me because when you have a huge following on Facebook for a large part of the population that follows IOMT, they won't see this because Facebook said no.
Yeah, they say no to trying to advertise, trying to get the word out. Yeah, anything like this. Again, it's not a question of whether or not to have blasphemy laws, Anita. It's which blasphemy laws do you have on the books. And right now, the people in the white coats have the credibility, and they are our modern-day clergy. And if you go against them, if you go against what their dogma is, people like Facebook are very uncomfortable, and they say, no, we're not going to let you tell people mercury is poisonous. And they also don't want people to rally and actually – it's really the reaction to the truth that they're really afraid of as well. But yeah, that's no surprise that Facebook said, hey, no, we don't want to take your Substack article and promote it. That's no surprise there because the truth is – the truth is what will, bring down this entire deck of cards or house of cards, I guess. Anita Tibau, we really appreciate it. Be safe, and we'll do it again soon.
Thank you so much for having me again, Paul.
Absolutely.
You as well. Have a wonderful weekend.
All right. Yes, yes, ma'am. Folks, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back here in just a moment.
Behind every precious life, there was a choice. Behind every family moment, behind every special memory, there was a choice. A life of joy, a life that is beautifully and wonderfully made. At 7 Weeks Coffee, we are funding the pro-life movement, one cup at a time. Will you let your coffee serve a greater purpose?
The Paul Harrell Program.
All right, folks, welcome back. So it's been a while. Checked in with Dr. Andrew Paquette, who is got a fantastic Substack over at thezarkfiles.substack.com. For those of you who don't know, Dr. Paquette has uncovered election fraud, machine voting fraud. He was integral to exposing that we can't trust the results of what happened in the Texas primary between John Cornyn and Ken Paxton months ago at this point. He uncovered a lot of fraud in Bexar County, Texas. But he's recently, well, it's actually not recent. We're going to have him explain it. He's done so much work for a long time going into the voter rolls, looking at algorithms. Specifically, he's focused on the state of New York. Wouldn't you believe it? Wouldn't you know it? That it looks like New York has a lot of election issues, voter registration issues, particularly with signatures, and how you have these clones that all have signatures that are exactly the same. Now, some of this information has been recently posted to X, but I know he's reported it in the past. And first of all, I just want to welcome Dr. Andrew Paquette is back with us. Dr. Paquette, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, it's a pleasure. Always nice to talk to you, Paul.
Yes, sir. So this was one of the tweets. I saw it this morning. I texted you and I said, you got to come on the show today to talk about this. And I'd love we're going to need all the context that you can give us here. But you have this post, and you've got these images of signatures. And it's the same T break, the same T bump, same G break, statistically impossible for real signatures, even from the same person signing twice. What am I seeing right here on the screen?
Okay, so first off, you're looking at a heavily redacted real signature. Okay, so in fact, you know what? Let me back up. I want to explain where this came from. Do you mind?
Thank you.
Okay, so
go for it.
So what it is that in New York, I actually didn't anticipate that I would find any fraud in New York, believe it or not. I mean, we're famous as the home of the mob, or one of two homes of the mob, the other being Chicago. And yet I thought I wouldn't find anything. But the reason was because New York is famous for being a blue state. So I figured, why would they rig anything in a state that is reliably blue? It's a huge risk, and they don't really stand to gain very much by doing that. But anyway, I decided I'd look anyway because the data I had available was New York. So I looked at their voter rolls and very quickly started finding what I call clones. Peter Ticken calls them modified duplicates. But what this is let's say it was with my ID, right? So I go in and register and I get an ID number. I'm legitimate. I'm a real human being. I'm qualified. I'm an American citizen. I'm over 18. I live where I say I live, et cetera, which is in New York. But then somehow they get another record that has my name, my address, my birth date, everything else on it, but it's got a different ID number. Now, the thing is, I don't control that. Okay. Somebody else can actually monkey around with that account, and they can use it to generate a genuine ballot, not a fake ballot. It's a fake registration, but it's a real ballot. So now we've got Andrew Paquette number 1 and Andrew Paquette number 2. Now there's a bunch of different ways this can work downstream. I'm not going to get into that right now. The main issue is, it turns out there were about 1.5 million records like this that existed independent of an original ID. Now, in most cases, it's only one extra, so it's me plus one. But in the more egregious cases, they go up to 1 plus 25. Okay, so that's all the way at the high end. And I was thinking, there's a law in New York that states in order to get registered to vote in New York, you have to sign a form. And the form is an affidavit. It actually has the legal weight of an affidavit. That's why you have to sign it by hand, right? And what it does is it attests to your qualifications as a voter, that you are a U.S. citizen, that you are over 18 years of age, that you do live at a specific address, this is your correct name, etc. So I was thinking, how on earth does anyone get a document like this with a wet signature on it for an ID that doesn't exist? Okay, so Andrew Paquette number 2, where is the form with another signature on it? And does it look like my handwriting or not? That's what I was thinking, right? And then when it came to people who had 10, 11, 12, 15, 25 registrations, and in some of those, we had those canvassed, and we know they don't even exist at all. So how do you get a signature for one of those? Did anyone sign a form, or did they just inject these records straight into the database without going to the trouble, right? So, and I'm having these thoughts while I'm in the shower. This is where I have all my best ideas.
Shower thoughts. I get it. We all have them.
Yeah. Yeah, I should take a shower again to solve another algorithm.
You just put one on your desk. We just need waterproof computer chips.
Yeah, that would really wreak havoc with my interviews. Anyway, so my viewer count would probably go up. In any event, or down, I suppose.
It would go up with all the wrong people, Andrew. All the wrong people.
Yeah, exactly. So getting back to the subject at hand, right? So I was wondering, how do they actually explain these registrations? Because if they don't have a signature on a form, they violate a law. And if they do have a signature on the form, it has to be fake, which violates the law. There's no way around it. The funny thing about this, I get this actually fairly often. People say, well, what does it matter? It's an extra registration. It's a database artifact. It's, they come up with all these like silly excuses that really don't match the data. And I'm thinking, well, you can use this to make genuine ballots. And secondly, there are multiple laws being violated, but one of them here, and they can't get out of it. If the thing exists at all in the database, there either is or there isn't a form behind it. If there isn't, it violates the law. And if there is, it violates the law because it has to be a forgery. Okay. So I wanted to obtain copies of these signature forms, right? So I asked a lady who specialized in doing what in New York is called a FOIL request, Freedom of Information Law, which is the same thing as Freedom of Information Act. But we call them FOILs. And I asked her if she could arrange to put together a bunch of FOIL requests to get the data on these fake registrations. And I said, I'll give you the ID numbers and you just ask for the signature files for these people. Or actually what I wanted was the registration forms or the application, right? And she said, first off, you've got 1.5 million numbers here. There's no way any county is going to agree to this. You have to bring the number down. So we agreed that we'd go with 50 numbers as a starting point because she said that's small enough that, the counties would probably agree to that. So we sent those out and most of the counties said no, they wouldn't hand over the documents at all. But a few of them did. Now, all of the worst counties, like New York City, every single county in New York City said, forget it, we're not giving you anything. So that's the place where we find all the people with 25 records and none of them are real, right? But we did get documents from some counties. So Schenectady is one, Herkimer County is one. This particular image you have up there, that's from, actually, I'd rather not identify the county it's from because if I do that
they're cooperating. They're cooperating with somebody who's trying to get the truth to the people. You don't want to. You don't want to burn your source.
It also interferes with the redaction process. So anyway, so this document came from that appeal to 62 counties. Okay, and what you're looking at are extracts of 3 different forms attached to 3 different ID numbers for the same man. So he's got the same name, same date of birth, same address. This particular one, I don't remember if they're all registered on the same day, but I think they were. The thing is that one of the conditions I made just to cull the number of records I was asking for is I went for registrations that were all within the same 10-day period. So these 3, they're either on the same day or within 10 days of each other. Okay, so what you've got is you've got 3 distinct accounts in the voter roll registration database. And by the way, they only purged these as duplicates after I identified them. So the whole list of records that I gave them, when they sent them back, at the time I sent the request out, they were all active. Every single one of the records was active. So all 3 of those were active. And then when they sent them back to me about a month later, all the extras were purged, and the purge date was the same on every one of them 2 days before they sent these back, right? So it was obvious they didn't know these were duplicates until I had alerted them to it. And that happened in several other counties as well. But the point is that one of the explanations I get is that this happens with simultaneous receipt of registration forms. So for instance, if you just are let out of jail and your voting rights are restored, the judge can send an order to the Board of Elections saying to restore my voting rights, or your voting rights. We're going to use the example for this one. And then on your way to the Board of Elections, you stop by the DMV to register your new car, and you tick the box to register to vote. And then on the way to the Board of Elections, you stop off at a university where they've got a voter registration drive, and you fill out one of those forms. And then you get to the BOE and you fill out another one. So now you've got 4 independent avenues to register, okay? So the explanation I get for these is quite often that you've got these 4 avenues of registration that all arrive at the BOE simultaneously and at 4 separate desks.
And
So
BOE
each of these-
is Board of Elections, correct?
Yeah. So each of these 4 desks isn't communicating with the other, so they all process them independently, and you wind up with 4 registrations. Now, first off, there's a number of reasons why that can't be true. But first off, it's also legally improper if that is true, okay, or which we know it isn't, but let's just pretend for the sake of argument that it was. And the reason is because the law requires that as part of the registration process, the county takes your name and birth date and runs it through the state database to see if it's already in there. And if it is, they're not allowed to give you another ID number, okay? Now, if it is in there, they make a couple further checks. They'll check your driver's license number or the last 4 digits of your social security number or your address. But the point is they have to check to see if you're already in the database. And if you are, they have to refuse the application. And this is not only in state law, it's in federal law, okay? So if the 4 simultaneous applications idea is true, then they're obviously not running it through the state database, which means they're violating the law. So it's illegal right there. But then we get to these signatures, and this is where it gets really interesting. Because, and actually, could you throw up that post again, if it's possible?
Yes, sir. Here it is.
Okay, so I've got another one that's a slightly different example, but these are obviously the exact same signature. Okay, so these are based.
Hang on, let me see if I can't find it. Is this
it's the one that's got the kind of loopy thing in the middle? Not that one. I mean, these are that's the one. Okay, so if you look at the items I've highlighted, the dot group and the dust specks. Okay, those dust specks are like scan artifacts. This is like bits of dust on the scanner bed when it's photographed. Okay. So these are all the same digital file. And by the way, the difference between this and the other one, which is also the same digital file, is that the other one additionally applied a scale factor to it. And I had to reverse the scale so you could see that they were the same. And by reversing the scale, it blew away the pixels that represented the dust specks. So that's the only reason you don't see those. But in any case, they're obviously the same digital signature. So what I think is going on is that they've got a tool built into their computers that is automatically duplicating these records, and it's copying the signature file so that it meets that criteria. There's no way they've got 3 separate pieces of paper that have the same signature on them that is identical all the way down to the dust specks on the scanner bed. And the other thing is, this destroys completely the previous explanation, because there's no way somebody can, at a college campus during a voter registration drive and at the DMV and at the BOE, separately sign their name exactly the same way like this. That's not possible.
And not to mention, if anybody does that, I mean, one person maybe registers 4 different places, but is this really a common occurrence where you're going to have, hundreds of people all registering 4 different places? That makes no sense. Most people, when they register, they don't register again.
And by the way, one thing I want to say, if I could do this, if I could literally make my signature exactly the same every single time like this so that you could examine it microscopically and it's the same, I'd have a TV show right now. I'd be on ABC. I'd be like the most amazing guy who ever lived because I could sign my name exactly the same way every single time. This simply is not a possible occurrence. So anyway, so that's the significance of this. And this is kind of combined with another finding I have, just so you understand what I'm talking about. I'm going to explain it to you. So I said that I think that this is software that's running resident on the computer that they're registering voters with, right? And that it's copying the data. Now, the reason I believe this is twofold. Number one, it's totally consistent with the data. And 2, and this is unfortunately only a single sample, but it's a very important one. I spoke with a voter who contacted me about her registration. She had lived in Manhattan, which is New York County, and then moved out of the country for a couple of years and then moved back to a different county. And she suspected that her previous registration was still active and she wanted me to check on it for her, okay? And I found out indeed it was. So she recounted to me how she registered. And the way it worked was she went into that new county and she was talking to the gal behind the desk, and she said, "Look, we already have your name in the database. We already it's got the same date of birth, so you're already in there. So I can't re-register you. So what I'll do is I'll just update the existing registration with your address." And that's the legal way to do it. That's exactly how it's supposed to happen. And so they went ahead and completed the process. And as far as she was concerned, as far as the clerk was concerned, when she pushed the enter key, that's exactly what happened. They followed the law. That should not have created a new ID number, but it did. So my opinion, just based on that, and then when I look at all the rest of the data I'm looking at, is that their software sitting on these computers that the people using the computers don't even know is there. And my guess is it is looking for, say, every 11th or 12th or 13th record, something like that, and it clones it. And I don't mean every record created. I mean, like, for instance, in that case, she was making a change to an existing record. And I see that a lot of these are associated with such changes. So I think they've got something in there that is copying records that have popped up in the context of a change request. And it's selecting some of them and just duplicating them and copying the signatures over and then giving them new ID numbers. And that's what's resulting in all of these excess registrations, 1.5 million in number in New York. However, one thing about that number that's important to understand is that that's only what was in there at the time I was looking at them. My knowledge of the spiral algorithm allows me to find another 500,000 of this type of record that were deleted. So at one time or another, I would say there is a minimum of 2 million records like this. And by the way, when I say 2 million, that's approximately, because the number deleted isn't actually 500,000; it's 499,000 and change. I forget what the change is. And the same thing goes for the 1.5 million number. That one is also 1,499,000 and change. But it's not much different.
I mean, just like everything that you report on, Dr. Paquette, it's incredibly complicated. But that's the systems that are robbing us of our republic, that are rigging our elections, have got to be incredibly complicated in order to get away with it, right? It's all buried, it's all secretive. Your latest post over on your Substack, Zark Files, Z-A-R-K, truth bombs dropping on X. You write, as some of you have noticed, I've been posting some high quality content on X lately. My X account is Zark Files. This started exactly 8 days ago. The reason is that I decided to get to the bottom of why people posting about my research can get millions of views. But when I did the same thing, I'd get dozens or single digits. Now, why do you think that is, Andrew? Why do you think now all of a sudden, these X posts, I mean, they got my attention, but I follow you. I see your content. But some of your followers aren't seeing it. Why do you think they're now seeing it and we're seeing your X account explode with this election integrity content?
Well, it turns out that when I used to post in the prior to 8 days ago, I like to include links, and this is, maybe it's just because of my research work, my PhD thesis, and kind of pounded into my head that anytime you say something, you have to back it up. And when I was writing for Law Enforcement Today, it was the same story.
That's really funny. It's like, not on X, man. You can say whatever you want, and you don't ever have to back it up.
Well, at least not with a link. So anyway, so at Law Enforcement Today, it was, or even when I wrote for Red Voice Media, they were like, look, you have to have a link for any substantive statement that you're making or claim so that we know you got it from somewhere. And I'm sure you're familiar with that as well. So I got in the habit of doing that. So when I was on X, earlier, what I would do is, if I made a claim about my research, I would link to one of my research papers, or I'd link to a Zark Files article, because those tend to be more current than my research papers. And it turns out it was absolutely throttling my reach, not only because they were links, but specifically because they were links to a Substack. Because apparently X hates Substack. They consider it a competitor of some kind. So they really, really hurt your reach if you link and if you go there. So about 8 days ago, I decided, okay, fine, I'm not going to use links anymore. And would you believe it? The view counts are just absolutely exploding. Yesterday, I wrote accidentally, I wrote 5 posts. It was supposed to be one post that was a thread, so that it would have like a bunch of replies, but I accidentally posted them all independently. And I wind up with 3 genuinely viral posts, all posted within 5 minutes of each other. So the worst performing of them got around 250,000 views, and it's still counting. It hasn't even been, oh wait, no, it has been 24 hours now. It's just slightly over a day at this point. And then the next best performing one was around 475,000. And then the one you showed is the best performing one, which was around 525,000 the last time I looked. So that's all genuinely viral. And that's on an account that only had 2,000 followers maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. At this point, I think I've got 7,000 followers. Yeah, so you're at 527 now. So that's starting to slow down. That was going up at the rate of about 1.3 thousand a minute for a little while. So this is giving me an idea what the natural audience size is for this kind of information.
Got to get it out, and I'm so glad this is happening. You do whatever you can. I mean, X is a great platform to share information. You just got to hit it right, you know. I don't post. I don't think I don't actively post enough, but I mean, I don't have but a few thousand followers, and you know, I get hardly any traction at all. Although some, you know, I've talked to people with 30,000 followers, and they rage quit X because you know, one of my posts gets, you know, more traction than even their post does, and they've got 30,000 followers. So it is kind of tricky sometimes, but I'm just happy to celebrate the fact that this information is getting out, because we've got to get it to as many people as we can if we want to secure our elections. I got your card game. I should have brought it from the house. You've got a new card game out. I want to make sure we plug that, because this is another effort to teach what's going on. Let's actually listen to this video.
Hello, I am Dr. Zark. Elections consist of the following 3 elements: voters, candidates, and ballots. Voters are too numerous to govern effectively. This is why they need dedicated representatives. Candidates are nominated to give voters a choice of who will represent their interests. Secret ballots allow voters to express their choices without fear of retribution. Now, after years of scientific study, Dr. Zark has discovered that it is possible to conduct elections without voters or candidates. That's right, ballots only. Dr. Zark's selection game shows how this can work. Instead of voting for candidates, you play to destroy your opponent's votes while multiplying your own. It's almost like real life. Give it a try and learn. Dr. Zark's selection game, the way it might already be.
So I obviously I love the marketing. I know you were doing a kind of was it a GoFundMe effort or a Kickstarter? Kickstarter. Where are we at on this game?
Well, it's funded, but I'm not at break even yet. Let me go check it right now. So I'm at 33.32 with 47 backers. 33.87. It just went up. I don't know how many packs of cards each one is getting, but I know one person reported to me she's getting 14. So they're getting multiples. The thing about this is at 2,500 it pays for that order of cards, but it doesn't pay for the prototypes I've made, one of which you have. So to cover both costs, I need to get up to about 5,000. So I'm still short of being fully, hitting break even, I guess is a better way to say it. And then it's profitable after that. I mean, the main reason I made this is because I do want to teach people about election fraud. And I wanted to do it in a fun way that you could share with your family, regardless of your party. So it's completely nonpartisan. There are no references to specific parties at all. The whole idea is that the last 10% of the votes are really what sways the election one way or the other. And those votes, interestingly enough, are the ones that are heavily contested in elections. So what happens is, it's less about what the voters want or what the candidates can get out of their voters. It's more about the lawyers who are able to block the counting of certain ballots, or people who actually inject fake ones or fraudulently obtained ballots into the system. So when you're playing the game, you're basically dealing with a combination of fraudulent and real ballots. And you're going to find yourself thinking, okay, to win this game, I have to destroy my opponent's legitimate votes. And meanwhile, I have to multiply my votes, even if it means committing fraud to do it. So I want people to get a feeling of that mindset, which is what that game is all about. And really what I'm hoping is this does basically the same thing my X account is doing, because the higher the number of decks I order, the less they cost per deck, and I can really scale it up so that this gets to a lot of people. And you know this because you already did your game. So for me right now, I'm only looking at, I think this is around 100 odd decks I'm making. But to me, for this to really do its job, it has to go way above that. And just like the X-Posts are doing, because I think this concept needs to spread around. But, you know, there are all these different environments within which we have opportunities to talk about these things, right? And one of the hardest things to accomplish is to discuss election fraud with people who are predisposed to think that it doesn't happen, primarily because they believe the media push talking points that election fraud is rare, and when it happens, it's minor and it doesn't really affect anything. So I think that the way I've designed the game, it's something that can be appealing to those people. So you can actually play it with someone in your family who disagrees with you on these things, and they can still enjoy the game, and they're going to feel in their mind what it's like to cheat. And it's going to, therefore, it's going to, how shall I say this? It's going to build in a recognition factor for when they see other stories related to these kinds of things. And of course, every single thing in the game is based on something real that I've seen in my research. Now, some of them are a little harder to figure out than others, but it's all based on reality. And what that means is that recognition factor will actually click in. If someone's played this and they've made any effort to do well, they're going to be thinking exactly the same way the fraudsters are. So when they run across stories that touch on those issues, they're going to recognize them, and they're going to be, I think, a little bit less likely to dismiss them. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, sir. It absolutely does. It makes sense, and I totally support your work, and I'm so glad. I hope people get the card game when it's available. We'll have you back on when it's available for people to get, and I just want to thank you for.
It's available now.
Oh, it's available now. All right. Well, where do we
you can go on Kickstarter right now. Well, okay. When you say available to get, what I mean is you can go on Kickstarter, because if you wait until the Kickstarter thing's over, it's not available then. You see what I'm saying?
I got you. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I'm sorry to have interrupted you. I really feel bad.
No, it's fine right here. So yeah, we throw this up on the screen for everybody to see. We'll go full screen so they get the whole picture. So yeah, you go to Kickstarter right now. Just Google Zark, Dr. Zark election game, Kickstarter, and there you have. You can go right now, and you can. So people can, if they contribute to this, then they're going to get a game.
Yeah, it'll look like this. This is the deck of cards. It's got instructions in it.
Hey, show it again. Show it again. We just missed it. Go ahead. Show us the deck again.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So just the deck of cards.
Yeah, but hang on. Can we? Boy, that's all blurry, so you can't see it. And then it's got 72 cards. By the way, we hit the first goal. It was going to be 60 cards, but I made another 12 because we funded. But this is the deck. Comes in a pack, and it's got all of its instructions. The cards themselves are pretty funny, in my opinion. Now, one thing I did is it's a mixture of AI art, my art, and my data charts. So the extra cards I made for the game are all research cards. So they use some of the infographics that I make for my peer-reviewed journal articles and so on. So although players have this kind of funny way of, how shall I say this, learning how to appreciate what election fraud looks like, I also have real data in there as well. So, and those things I list what they are and what they're for. So they get talking points built into it as well.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate it. Dr. Andrew Paquette, Zark Files, look it up. Thank you for your work, sir, and can't wait to talk again soon.
Okay, no problem.
All right, yes, sir.
Talk
Folks,
to you later.
we're going to take a break back here in just a moment.
My name is John, and this is my beautiful wife, Lori, and this is our Star Wars Ewok. His name is Scout, and we have Scout for about 11 years now, and we started noticing about 3 years ago he started slowing down. He was unable to jump on the bed. He was kind of a little bit grumpier, and when my daughters, Macy and Mariah, would take him on walks, he would walk for about 30 yards, and then he'd lay down, and they'd carry him the rest of the way. So I heard about Pet Club 24/7 and about the products from a gentleman that I really trust and share a friendship with. And he mentioned to me that they have products that are going to help him with his arthritis, help him build his immune system. And I said, okay, no problem. Let's try them out. And I kid you guys not, within about 2 to 3 days, we started noticing a little difference. And then we took Scout on a walk probably about a week after we started using the products, the Mush Puppies, and he would walk the entire way. He would walk at least a mile, and it's just been completely amazing. He's a new dog. He's 11 years old, which is around 80 years in dog years, and he's just happy. He's more energetic. He's not the grumpy old man he used to be, and we're just so thankful. And it was perfect timing because we lost our boxer Yankee about 1.5 years ago, and it was really hard on us. So I'm so thankful for Pet Club 24/7 for the products that they offer. Imagine if you could have your best friend around one more day or one more week or even one more year. I'm so blessed and thankful that we were able to find this company and find these products for Scout. So thank you guys. Give it a shot. We appreciate you. God bless everyone.
For centuries, light has been used to heal. Awaken the body with Red Vive.
The Paul Harrell Program.
All right, welcome back to the show. Hey, thank you guys so much for sticking with us. I want to thank Anita Tibau. I want to thank Dr. Andrew Paquette for coming on the show and just spending a Friday with us. We're kind of winding things down here. I see Deb Pollen 2020 writes in the LFA chat. Paul, have a blessed weekend. I hope you have a blessed weekend, Deb, and everybody else out there. Obviously, we're going to be back here Monday. I do want to go over a few of the This has been a really good week in terms of the news, in my opinion, whether we're looking at the indictment of James Comey, the indictment of Anthony Fauci lieutenant. Now we have Tulsi Gabbard saying they're investigating Anthony Fauci for perjury. And then we get the Supreme Court decision. The Supreme Court decision that says, hey, you can no longer gerrymander congressional districts by race. And now the floodgates are open. People have been wondering why President Trump doesn't seem as concerned about the midterms as the rest of us are. And we now have a potential answer. Let me just share with you a few details that have gone on when it comes to southern red states. They've had enough. They're tired of playing with both hands behind their back, while New England gets to have an unlimited speed limit. But we've got this governor on our speed limit where we can't go above a certain miles per hour because of a court-imposed apportionment rule and gerrymander districts. Eric Daugherty, it's official, red southern states are gunning to redistrict. Florida got it done this week. Now Louisiana, Tennessee, Alabama, and South Carolina are all signaling they are going to redistrict their states ahead of the midterms. A couple of things. You had Mark Alias trying to stop the governor of Louisiana from redistricting his state. But it says that a court just slapped down the cheating leftist election lawyer Mark Alias' attempt to force Louisiana to hold their 2026 congressional districts under the old map or under the current map. So Florida, right now, we've got 4 new seats thanks to Florida. Alabama is going to give us 2 more seats, giving us 6. Tennessee will eliminate Memphis. That's 1. Louisiana could give us 2. I erroneously said that Louisiana has 1 Democrat district. No, they actually have 2. And then South Carolina would give us 1 seat. That would be 10 seats total, and that doesn't even counting Mississippi, and we're not counting Georgia. A 3-judge district court panel issued an order affirming that Louisiana may not conduct congressional elections under its now unconstitutional map because of the Supreme Court ruling. And then we have, let's see, let me keep going here. So there was some debate about South Carolina. What's South Carolina going to do? And we had the lieutenant governor of South Carolina. Let's see, Conservative America First. I believe she's South Carolina. Yeah, now's the time to stand with Donald Trump and protect the future of America. You have the governor of South Carolina, Henry McMaster. The U.S. Supreme Court upheld South Carolina's current congressional map in 2024. In light of the court's most recent decision on the Voting Rights Act, it would be appropriate for the General Assembly to ensure that South Carolina's congressional map still complies with all requirements. So they're talking about redistricting. Also, I threw a lot of shade at Kay Ivey, or a little bit of shade at Kay Ivey in Alabama. Looks like she's got the message, got the memo. She's coming through. It's official. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey has called a special session on Monday to redraw Alabama's congressional map. That really should give the GOP 2 additional seats in all probability. South Carolina appears to move forward towards redistricting as well. And so, again, Florida 4, Louisiana 2, Alabama 2, Tennessee 1. Again, Mississippi needs to do something as well because I think they could take advantage of this in a big way. So it's been a crazy week when it comes to that. It's been a very, very it's been very fluid, but it has been extremely interesting. I just think generally a good thing. But then you're going to have the Democrats. The Democrats are going to strike back, and again, this is fine. Governor Mikey Sherrill announced his plan to redistrict New Jersey in order to offset new right-wing gerrymanders in the South. Democrats could net 2 seats. This is fine, though. You should expect this. This is fine. Let's be honest with one another. Let's quit pretending. And I think we're going to be better off in the long run, because even if the Democrats gerrymander even more than they've already gerrymandered, I mean, look at that map, for goodness sake. Even if the Democrats gerrymander, more than they've ever more than they are now, the South and the flyover country still makes it near impossible for the Democrats to control the House of Representatives. So that is something to think about there for sure. In other news, as we wind things down and get to the weekend, this story has been nuts to me. Maybe we'll cover it. This is a story I got to cover with Rob and Eric, although Rob is out all next week on vacation. But anyway, we're going to have a great week here on the show. That's Mike Pence talking about Fauci. Senator Mike Lee, kill the kill switch. This is a follow-up on the story about the AI technology they're trying to put in your cars, submitting your biometric data to criminal databases. There's a really funny sketch that we didn't end up getting to this week. Anyway, it's just been a crazy week. We're out of time. We're going to hand it off to Secret America. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Redvive Health. Call 844-REDVIVE. Mention my name, Paul. Save 35% off these life healing red light panels. New Horizon Real Estate, Gateway Sight and Sound, 7 Weeks Coffee, Sherrod Chiropractic. Don't forget about Pet Club 24/7. We'll have more about that next week. God bless. This is the time where you need to go to church this weekend. If you don't go to church, please find a church that preaches the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. For those of you that do go to church, and by the way, his mighty ability to save sinners and senators, if you do go to church, have a blessed Lord's Day, and we will see you back here on Monday. God bless.